Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be doing part 2 of our second ever coffee roaster tier list. So I'm going to run through the criteria one more time real quick, and the coffee roasters included in this tier list are all either American or Canadian-based coffee roasters, and they are coffee roasters that were either suggested to us on our first ever coffee roaster tier list that I felt comfortable discussing. There are coffee roasters that we have done at least 2 full bag reviews of on this channel. And then there is one coffee roaster that we featured on our first ever tier list that I felt needed to be updated for this tier list. So with all of that out of the way, let's jump right back into it. And next up we have Ilse, which is based out of Stamford, Connecticut. And they're a coffee roaster I have only ever had 2 full bags of. And as a result, I've been really impressed with both of the coffees that I have had for the reason that they are very flavorful cups of coffee. I've heard so many positive things about this coffee roaster from so many people that I have tremendous respect for, and it's safe to see why. They are great. I feel like if I had more of their coffee, I would feel even more strong about them, but they do definitely radiate world-class potential, and I have my eye on a couple of coffees that they're currently offering, and I feel like with a little bit more experience, they could definitely justify their spot in a world-class in the near future. I'm going to put them in the amazing category for right now. Wonderful coffee roaster. All right, next up we have JBC, and another shout out to Brian if he's watching, as he was also a JBC hookup for me back in the day, as he's originally from Wisconsin and he used to purchase so many of JBC's coffees. They're based out of Madison, Wisconsin, and we have done one full bag review of their coffee on this channel. With that being said, I've been drinking their coffee for a very long time. My first ever coffee roaster shirt was a JBC coffee shirt, so I like them a lot. Had so many of their coffees, and experimental, weird, out there coffees are not a new thing, as Brian used to purchase so many of their weird ones, and as a result, I've in the past had mixed experiences with JBC, some of their really weird processed coffees, but for the most part, they've come out pretty good in general. I like them. I have a very soft spot for them in general. I'm going to put them in the good category. Solid coffee roaster overall. Next up, we have Kuma, which is based out of Seattle, Washington, and we have done, I believe, 2 full bag reviews of their coffee on this channel, and they're one of those coffee roasters that if we just kind of need something to review, then they're easy to find given that they are local. They're one of the best coffee roasters in the city of Seattle. If you don't count Camber and you don't count Olympia, then they're probably in the top 2, top 3 best coffee roasters in the city of Seattle. With that being said, they're not necessarily my favorite. I have so much experience with them, been drinking them for a very long time, and usually drink them on a weekly basis. I'm usually able to find a place that serves me a cup of coffee from them that I'm curious in trying, and I like them, don't love them, think they're okay, so I'm going to put them in the okay category. All right, next up we have Lil Wolf, based out of, where are they based out of? Ipswich, Massachusetts. And they're a coffee roaster that we have done 2 full bag reviews of on this channel, and they might be the coffee roaster that I'm looking forward to discussing the most on this tier list, as I have a huge disagreement with my group chat on my feelings about this coffee roaster. So most of the people in the group chat feel like they are a world-class coffee roaster, but this is a perfect opportunity to discuss what will actually fall in the world-class category for me. You either need to be a really unique coffee roaster or you need to be perfect. Ideally, a combination of the two. And I don't think Lil Wolf falls into either of those 2 categories. The issue with me for Lil Wolf has been that they have very much kept within the box of expectations. All of the Kenyans I've had from them have tasted like Kenyans. All of the Perus I've had have tasted like Perus. The Colombians like Colombians, and the Ethiopians like Ethiopians, which is a good thing in one sense. You know what you're going to get from a bag of coffee when you purchase it from them. However, I am always looking for something that's a little bit unique, a little bit out there, and a little bit more than just the conventional expectation. With that being said, they do an amazing job. I think they are probably one of the 5 best coffee roasters on this tier list. I think the disagreement has just kind of put them in an uneasy place for me. Still think they're amazing. Not quite world-class for me, so as a result, I'm going to put them in the great category. Next up, we have Luna, which is based out of Langley, British Columbia. I believe we have 3 full bag reviews of their coffee on this channel, if not 2. I believe it's 3, though. At least 3. We have the Strawberry Sundae, we have the Techno Peach, and then we have the Blue Raspberry. And for the most part, I've really liked all 3 of those coffees. Ironically, it's the Techno Peach that was my least favorite, but it's the Techno Peach that was my first ever coffee from Luna. Back in the day, when they were first starting out, there were a lot of coffee shops in Vancouver that were serving Luna's coffee, and I was a really big fan, so much so that I purchased the Techno Peach, brought it back, and really enjoyed it. So it was a little bit of an iconic coffee for me to go back and review. It might have been a little underwhelming this time around, but the other coffees that we have reviewed on this channel have either been spectacular or they have been really, really nice coffees. As a result, I feel like maybe if they just ironed out the consistency, then we could see them in the world-class category, as they are my favorite Canadian-based coffee roaster. So I'm going to put them in the amazing category. I think they're doing great work, and I could definitely see them potentially getting into that category one day. All right, next up we have Makino, which is based out of Coatesville, Pennsylvania, and we've done 2 full bag reviews of Makino's coffee, and I have also had some Makino before we ever started this channel. And for the most part, I see a lot of consistency. I think that they're a pretty good coffee roaster. The most recent coffee we reviewed was the Bombay wash-processed Ethiopia, which I thought was fine. Before that, it was a Rambagira, a wash-processed Rwandan, which is probably still my favorite Rwandan that I've ever reviewed on this channel. Given that my most recent experience was more of an okay experience, I'm just going to put them in the good category. They're consistent, doing great work overall. I think they're a solid coffee roaster, so they will fall into that good category for me. Next up, we have One Line, based out of Heath, Ohio, and this is another coffee roaster I had no familiarity with before we reviewed them. We did 2 full bag reviews of their coffee recently. One was a honey-processed Costa Rican SL28, and the other was a wash-processed Ecuador, the Lugmapata, which is one of my favorite coffees of the year. So this is where it gets really tricky to kind of rank them, because I have a feeling that the Lugmapata is just a really, really good coffee in general, no matter who roasts it. That being said, you still have to give credit to the coffee roaster for doing a good enough job with the coffee itself. And I think for all of those reasons, given that that was my last impression of this coffee roaster, and both of the coffees that I had from them exceeded my expectations, I do have to put them in the great category. So I don't know if that's where they actually are, but based off of my experiences, that's where they fall, since both of the coffees I had from them were actually above expectation. All right, next up we have Onyx Coffee Lab, based out of, I think it's technically Bentonville, Arkansas. They're from the Northwest Arkansas area, Bentonville, Rogers, Arkansas. And they were featured in our first ever coffee roaster tier list, and we put them in the world-class category, and I need to update that now because 2 things seems to have changed with Onyx. And it's kind of funny, the day I'm recording this video, they released, I believe, 1 natural and 2 wash-processed coffees. But over the past couple of years, they have gone a lot more on the experimental side of things, like black and white. And as a result, I have not enjoyed their coffee near as much as I did once upon a time. I will stand by what I said the first time we did this coffee roaster tier list, because 2 years ago, I felt like they were one of the best, if not the best, coffee roaster in the world. However, a combination of going a little bit more experimental, and it feels like maybe a slight bit more developed, has kind of dampened my impressions of them as a whole. So while once upon a time they were in the world-class category, I think now I need to bump them all the way down to good, because my last couple of experiences from them, and quite a few last couple of experiences from them, haven't necessarily been the best. I still think they're capable of world-class. They do buy some really impressive coffee beans, so I want to see them get back to that world-class again one day. I know I'll review them at some point again this year, hopefully not the Las Lajas though. Next up, we have Passenger, based out of Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and I know we have at least, I want to say, 4 or 5 or maybe 6 full bag reviews of their coffee. In addition to that, they have at least 1 coffee that has finished on our top 10 coffees of the year list the 2 years that we have done it. We have also been out to their cafe, which, truth be told, is my favorite cafe in the entire world. They reach world-class status for both reasons. They're an exceptionally unique coffee roaster in the sense that they freeze so many of their previous year's coffee beans, and as a result, they sell them, and you can purchase them both in-store, and they do sell them online on their Freezer Fridays. They also do offer some very interesting and unique coffees on their website, and in addition to that, they do about as good of a job with their coffee as I think any coffee roaster in the entire world does. I have nothing but positive things to say about them. As I always say, amazing coffee roaster, even more amazing people. I have never heard anybody say anything negative about this coffee roaster. They are one of the very best coffee roasters in the entire world, easily top 3 for me. I'm putting them in the world-class category. They're the gold standard for what a world-class coffee roaster should be. All right, next up we have Proud Mary, which is technically based out of Australia, but they do have a location in Portland. So I don't know if it's the same. I don't know if they roast the same, but this is obviously the Portland coffee roaster, as I have had 1 full bag review of their coffee on this channel, and I have a lot of single cup reviews as well. I've been to their cafe a ridiculous amount of times, and here's the thing. I have oftentimes found their coffee to be tame, at least the bags that I have tried. Every single coffee that I do go and try in their cafe from their deluxe pour over offerings menu is on the better side of things. So my experiences are either good, above average, or a little tame. I think that they have a world-class cafe. It is one of the very best cafes I have ever been to in the entire world, and that is attributed to their wonderful deluxe pour over menu. However, given most of my experiences with their bags of coffee have been kind of on the more standard side of things, I'm going to put them in the good category. I think they're very solid. Maybe if I did purchase some more of their higher end bags, then it's entirely possible that that might move up, but I think they're solid. So I'm going to put them right there in that good category. Next up, we have Ritual, which I think is technically based out of San Francisco, California. It's another one of these Bay Area coffee roasters. And they're a coffee roaster that we have not reviewed on this channel. They're another one that isn't necessarily my profile. A lot of the Bay Area coffees, every time I go out there, I do a coffee crawl. Equator's in there, Ritual's in there, and then of course 4 Barrels also in there, Andy Town, Sightglass. And I'm not necessarily a huge fan of any of them. 4 Barrels is probably my favorite of the bunch. But Ritual, been to a lot of their shops, never necessarily been impressed with anything. I don't really have any notable comments about them in general. So not necessarily my preference, haven't had anything I've really enjoyed from them. All right, next up we have Rogue Wave, which is based out of Edmonton, Alberta. And we have done 2 full bag reviews of their coffee. One was a carbonic maceration processed Kenyan coffee. And in credit to them, just like with Felix, I have not liked anybody's carbonic maceration processed anything. So I'm not taking that against them. I'm not holding that against them because I didn't particularly like that coffee. The other coffee that we're kind of judging them by is the wash processed Panama that we reviewed on this channel. And it did perform pretty well in the blind taste test rankings video. However, by the end of that coffee, I felt like there was so much potential in it that maybe I wasn't able to reach, but it just felt maybe a little bit more developed than I liked. I felt like maybe if that coffee would have been done a shade lighter, then it would have perhaps reached the full potential of what it was capable of. For all of those reasons, it wasn't necessarily the best experience. We also had a sample pack that I wasn't necessarily the biggest fan of, so entirely possible with maybe some other coffees. I feel like this will be a controversial placement. I'm going to put them in the okay category. I know they're extremely popular. They have very interesting offerings on their website, and perhaps if we try some more of their coffees, that might change, but neither of the two were necessarily my favorite, so I'm going to put them in the okay category. And last up, we have Roseline, based out of Portland, Oregon. And we've done a box set, I think, for kind of half-bag reviews of their coffee, and we've also done a couple of reviews at their cafe. And I will always say, I feel like they're one of the most underrated coffee roasters in the entire world, as they don't have the spotlight as much as so many others on this tier list. So, once upon a time, when I was still living in Denver, Lula Rose was a coffee shop that was serving so many different Pacific Northwest coffee roasters. So I remember they had Heart, they had Kuma, I believe they had Elm, and what I kept finding was it was their Roseline coffees that continuously impressed me every time I went to the shop and tried any of the coffees. When they first built a cafe out in Portland, I was really impressed by their coffee shop, so much so that when I was doing Portland coffee crawls, it was never the Heart, Kova, Stumptown, or Proud Mary coffees that were impressing me the most. It was always Roseline's coffees. And I know Roseline roasts a little lighter than some people might prefer, as I have actually had some people say to me that they don't particularly like how light the coffee is in general. With all of those things said, they may not offer a whole lot of higher end offerings, but I think they do such a wonderful job with their coffee that I can justify them on the lower side of this world-class category. But I think given that they are my favorite coffee roaster in the Pacific Northwest and one of my favorite coffee roasters in the United States, they earn themselves a spot in that world-class category. I think that they're wonderful, so I'm going to place them there. And that's kind of the way all of these coffee roasters finish. So, of course, I would love to know your thoughts on where these coffee roasters placed by the end of this tier list. If you strongly agree, strongly disagree with anything, I would love to know your opinions on this, given that this is very much a subjective list, and all of these coffee roasters are subject to change based off maybe some more experience with them. But for the most part, I'm actually kind of happy with the way this coffee roaster tier list turned out. This has been another really fun video to do, and I'm going to end the tier list side of things on that, and I'm going to thank you guys one more time for 500 subscribers, because that's a really cool milestone. Really happy to get there. And if we ever do reach the 1,000 subscriber mark, then we will do a European coffee roaster tier list as well, which is something I'm sure you guys want to see, and it's definitely something that I want to do as well. So give this video a like, subscribe if you're new around here. This right here has been part 2 of our coffee roaster tier list. Thank you for watching.